Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
If you saw the size of the blessing coming, you would understand the magnitude of the battle you are fighting. Has that ever popped up in your social media newsfeed? I always love to see it when it pops into mine. Hi, this is the Bible for Busy People. I'm Erica, your host, and all this week, you and I have been giving thanks to God for stuff that we don't really normally think about. And today, this is a big day because we are going to thank the Lord for blessings that are on the way. It's such a great feeling when somebody you love texts you and says, I'm on my way, I'm en route. And that's what we're believing for, that the answer to prayer, the blessing we've been longing for is en route. It's on the way. The work has begun. Sometimes it takes years. But God is always working. He never sleeps or slumbers. He's on your case. Do you know that Abraham and Sarah waited 9,125 days for their blessing? Won't you join me now in Genesis chapter 17, beginning in verse 1? When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to give you countless descendants. At this, Abram fell face down on the ground. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Instead, you will be called Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and kings will be among them. When you hear those words from God, doesn't it make sense now? That song that you've probably heard, Father Abraham had many sons had father. Oh, I should stop singing. Okay, now, so God gives the promise to Abraham, but he doesn't say that it's going to be McDonald's fast. He never promises that. And that's the hard part. That's where the rubber meets the road with faith. It's trusting when we don't see the unfolding of the blessing. It doesn't smell like there's a cake in the oven. The oven is seemingly cold and dark, and yet God is always cooking. That's an Erica paraphrase. Okay, join me now in Genesis 18, beginning in verse 1, as this powerful story of promise continues. The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. My Lord, he said, if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey. All right. They said, do as you have said. So Abraham ran back to the tent and said, Sarah, hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough and bake some bread. Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. Where is Sarah, your wife? The visitors asked. She's inside the tent, Abraham replied. Then one of them said, I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son. Now think about it. It's like 24 years now that have gone by since the promise from God. We pick up the story now in the middle of verse 10. Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "No, you did laugh." What an amazing exchange. We're going to jump now to Genesis chapter 21, beginning in verse 1. The Lord kept his word, the saga continues, and did for Sarah exactly what he had promised. She became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. This happened at just the time God had said it would, and Abraham named their son Isaac. 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah declared, "God has brought me laughter. All who hear about this will laugh with me." Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse a baby? Yet I have given Abraham a son in his old age. See, God keeps his promises, but it's hard in the waiting. Somewhere in those 25 years, Sarah and Abraham too decided to take matters into their own hands. And because it's the Bible for busy people, we didn't have time to get into that story today, but boy, was it a mess. And so it's a reminder to me and to you to trust God, to believe that the blessing is on the way, to trust that he hears our prayers and that he's going to answer them in his perfect timing. He works outside of our timelines and expectations and our human spreadsheets. God has his own perfect Excel sheet, and your name is on it, and your answer to prayer is on it. I believe this. Thank him now for the blessings on the way. Till next time, you are loved. Thank you for making time for the Bible for busy people today. If being part of this community is a blessing to you, it's super easy to share this podcast with someone you love. We're all about spreading the hope of Jesus like butter. So if you've got a moment to write a review, boy, we'd really appreciate that. Maybe you need a little prayer today, or you're ready to take that next step with God. I invite you to check out our show notes. You're going to find lots of encouragement there. This podcast is one branch on a tree called Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and thrive in God's purpose for your life. If you've got a pulse, you've got a purpose.